jungles of Central Africa lies a vast wilderness. Where an ancient world is touched by a modern one. And impenetrable forest meets the ocean. This is Gabon. Here, Africa's wild heritage is making a stand. In a world where many species face extinction, Gabon is a rare beacon of hope. But its natural riches also make it vulnerable, as the needs of many species come up against the needs of one. At stake is the survival, not just of an ecosystem, but perhaps the soul of a nation. It is the last place of its kind. A vestige of the wild Africa that prospered long before the first humans arrived. The wilds of Gabon look today much as they did then. Dark, dense rainforests blanket more than 3/4 of the country. Within them are secret worlds, some of which scientists are just beginning to know. For thousands of years, a complex community has flourished here. A web of relationships that unites every plant and animal in these forests. Forests that are ruled by two of Africa's most spectacular animals. Gabon's forests are drenched by up to 120 inches of rain a year. All the species here have adapted to the abundant water. From the Sitatunga to the elephants and lowland gorillas that delight in Gabon's swamplands. But this idyllic scene unfolds against an ever more precarious backdrop. Gabon lies right on the equator in Central Africa, surrounded by nations where civil unrest and uncontrolled exploitation of natural resources are rampant. In these countries, many species numbers have plummeted. The wilds of Gabon may be their last, best hope. In 2002, Gabon's leaders took a bold step. They established a system of national parks covering more than 10% of the country. Nothing on this scale had ever been attempted in Africa. Each of the parks has its own distinctive treasures. Lope, in the center of Gabon, is home to the biggest troops of mandrils ever recorded. Loango, to the west, has the breathtaking coastline. And Avindo, to the east, some of the biggest waterfalls in Central Africa. But the heart of Gabon is the jungle, which is dominated by one animal, the forest elephant. The forest elephant is very different from its larger cousin, the savanna elephant, and may be a completely separate species. It has adapted to the forest environment by developing long, straight tusks, which evolved to ease its passage through the tangled foliage. Remarkably, the elephant actually helps to create its jungle home. Like other forest dwellers, elephants' movements are driven by the availability of food, especially fruit. They consume nearly 100 species. But they don't digest everything they eat. Deposited in their dung, many seeds end up as food for other mammals, like Red River hogs. But the seeds that survive germinate and become trees. If elephants didn't redistribute seeds throughout the jungle, it would be much harder for many of the rainforest's trees to survive. As they move from one fruiting tree to the next, elephants create a huge network of trails that crisscross the forest. In their wanderings through the jungle, they've discovered hidden places to which they return again and again. This cave conceals something that elephants crave: precious mineral salts. Elephants travel many miles to reach such riches, hidden in places their kind have been visiting and leading their offspring to for centuries. The steps carved into the slope are a sign of just how long this tradition has lasted. Today, elephant traditions like these are threatened in Central Africa. And ironically, it's partly the elephant's skill as road builders that's put them in danger. Poachers supplying the lucrative ivory trade use these same trails to track down their quarry. And when they do, the outcome can be horrific. Not every human use of the elephant trails is destructive. Indigenous peoples have traveled these byways for at least 9,000 years. And in 1999, Wildlife Conservation Society researcher Mike Fay embarked on a 2,000-mile trek across Central Africa. His chief purpose: to draw attention to the threats facing the region's wildlife. His primary means of travel: the elephant trails. He called his journey the Mega Transect. Halfway through, Mike stumbled onto a poaching camp and found himself staring at a gruesome scene. This wasn't subsistence hunting. The meat was headed for local logging and mining camps. What Mike saw on the mega transect would turn out to have far-reaching and unexpected consequences. Together with WCS ecologist Lee White, Mike presented President Omar Bongo Ondimba with a plan to create 13 national parks. The president said yes.
For me, when Bongo said he was going to do it, it wasn't even like a dream come true. It was like winning the $256 million lottery.
Setting up the parks was a promising start, but only a start. Gabonese conservationists joined forces with the Wildlife Conservation Society, or WCS, and created park management teams like Operation Loango. One of the first problems they faced was pervasive animal poaching. It remains a serious problem today. All across Central Africa, elephants are hunted and killed for their ivory. While local poachers profit very little from what they kill, the tusks of a single large bull can bring thousands of dollars on the Asian open market. So anti-poaching forces face an uphill struggle. After discovering an elephant massacre near Zakuma National Park in southern Chad, Mike Fay is determined to learn more. He knows that especially in war-torn nations like Chad, national parks alone can't stem the tide of widespread poaching. Mike's investigating the fate of a savanna elephant named Annie, whom he'd been monitoring with a GPS tracking device.
7th of August, we discovered an elephant massacre north of the park. Those red dots represent carcasses of elephants. Annie was here when this massacre occurred. All of a sudden, she starts bolting toward the east. And you think, that's curious. How come she's all of a sudden bolting? Because every hour is a point, so the farther apart the points are, the farther she's gone in that hour. And then all of a sudden, she starts bolting south again. And right here, on the 15th of August, all of a sudden, she stops.
The only way to find out if Annie is alive or dead is from the air.
So our assumption is that she ran from the poachers. They caught up with her again at some point, and then she got shot. She ran for 3 hours, wounded. She died, and then these guys caught up to her the next morning, cut the tusks off, and destroyed the collar. But you'll never know until you go and look. So in 1 minute and 4 seconds, we will know. We found her. She's there, exactly where we said it. It's unbelievable.
These are Annie's remains. Park boundaries mean nothing to an elephant. And when one leaves the relative safety of a national park, as Annie did, it's more likely to be targeted by poachers.
We've got 4,000 elephants as of 2005 in this park, and we only have 3,000 now. That's 1 year. 1/4 of the population may be dead. This is the last stand for these guys, and we gotta protect them.
Though Gabon is more stable than Chad, even here, simply establishing a park is no guarantee that animals will be safe. To protect Gabon's elephants, scientists have to learn a lot more about them and where they go. For hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, Gabon's forest elephants have been making the trek to gather at a swampy meadow known as a bai. Long ago, elephants cleared this jungle oasis simply by walking and feeding here. And as the trees died out, they couldn't grow back. Though many other animals, from the lowland gorilla to the Sitatunga, congregate here, the dominant presence is the forest elephant. These highly intelligent creatures may wander for months on end in the jungles of Gabon, but they always carry with them the memory of the bai. And when they finally return, their greetings are enthusiastic. But family reunions are only one reason why elephants return again and again to the Bai. They also come for something they can find nowhere else. Below the water's surface is a gold mine of nutrients. Over time, the bedrock erodes, releasing minerals like sodium. Animal droppings are purified of their toxins, leaving other minerals. This elephant is blowing away sand to reach the gravel layer at the bottom, where the most mineral-rich water collects. Finding good sources of these nutrients is essential to these females, especially during pregnancy and nursing. Elephants only give birth every 4 to 5 years to one calf, so a mother's chief focus is keeping her offspring healthy and safe. This baby is young enough that it's probably his very first visit to the Bai. He's only interested in play, but this is a critical time for him. He must learn the location of the Bai and its importance, knowledge that is passed on by the older females who have been here many times. Despite their size, elephants can be very gentle. Even in the middle of a violent stampede, they almost never trample their young. At the Bai, there's a strict pecking order as to who feeds first. Only in this way is the Bai's social order maintained, from generation to generation. The life cycle of forest elephants has changed little over the millennia, but their numbers have drastically declined. 30 years ago, this region of Africa was home to some 300,000 forest elephants. Today, there may be only a third that many. Understanding elephant travel patterns is crucial to keeping safe those that remain. WCS researcher Steve Blake has been tracking elephant movements in Central Africa since 1998.
We really want to learn just the basics. Where do elephants go? How do they get there? And why? What habitats do they prefer? How do human pressures influence elephant movements?
These are questions Mike Fay would also like answered, so he's here to help with the collaring. WCS veterinarian Mike Koch is charged with tranquilizing the elephant. Tricky business, since she's a mother. The shot has hit the mark, but she still could bolt away. They have to find her before she disappears into the forest. A partially drugged elephant is at her most dangerous, to herself and to others.
Ooh, little guy, don't you worry. Ooh, don't panic.
This GPS transmitter will tell Steve Blake whether she travels beyond the park borders.
Pulse ox is at 83.
She's woken up disoriented and doesn't know where her baby is. The best place to be when an elephant gets angry is somewhere else. Reunited with her calf, she will soon settle down. Over the next few months, the GPS collar will provide scientists invaluable data on her movements. Already, Blake has learned some surprising things about just how far forest elephants travel.
To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about here, this one guy traversed 2 national parks in 3 days. and moved about 100 k's just like that, from the middle of a national park into an active logging concession.
Each time an elephant leaves a park, it's at risk. But it's not just elephants that need protection. Their movements have a secondary impact on the other species that depend so heavily on them. Especially endangered animals like the lowland gorilla, whose numbers have been decimated across Africa in recent years. Gorillas frequently come to the bays that elephants have cleared for the rich concentration of minerals here. Like elephants, they siphon nutrients from the pools and streams. They also get them from the mud and obtain other nutrients from sedges and other plants that only flourish at the bay. The bay is a kind of school for young gorillas as well. Daily tussles build communication skills and also help them discover how they fit into the group. Social relationships aren't instinctive. It takes practice for a gorilla to become an adult. Like elephants, western lowland gorillas are severely threatened by commercial poaching. Gabon remains one of the very last refuges for these great apes, and for several other species of primate. Like the chimpanzee. And the largest, most colorful monkey in the world. The mandrill. Mandrills are only found in Central Africa, and Gabon is where they have the best chance of survival. One of their last strongholds is in the forests of Lope National Park. Only adult males have this intense facial coloring. And it is the mandrills displaying the most vibrant colors that seem to mate most frequently. Blinking is a common form of greeting among mandrills, sometimes used to attract a mate. She's only half the size of her suitors, but she calls the shots. A red swelling around her tail is the green light for mating. In Lope National Park, hordes of more than 1,000 mandrills have been sighted, the largest non-human gatherings of primates anywhere in the world. As with elephants, it's crucial to know where mandrills travel, to confirm that Gabon's park boundaries have been drawn correctly. Researchers here in Lope have been gathering data on mandrills' movements using radio transmitters. Today, they're hoping to put one on a female. They build a blind near the river, where they suspect the mandrill troop will pass.
That's perfect. I think it's gonna be good.
Though there's no telling when they'll arrive.
Guys, you don't leave me a little entrance hole.
And targeting a mandrill would be much harder than an elephant, for veterinarian Mike Koch. All he can do is wait. Ten whole days pass before the troop begins to approach the bend in the river. Mike's hit a female, but it's not clear yet if he got a clean shot. The mandril's still awake.
Okay, let me get hold of it. Okay. Where is he? Hang on.
It's crucial to find her. If she loses consciousness and they can't find her, she could easily be picked off by a predator, or even drown.
Just hold on. Trish! Trish!
Now that the mandrill has been tranquilized, WCS wildlife vet Trish Reed can start her examination.
Everything under control. She's really in good shape, so she might get a little light. You might have to top her up.
To check for diseases like Ebola and the primate version of HIV, they take blood samples, then fit her with a radio collar.
Just like little human hands.
Yeah.
Really long fingers and very hairy.
And the nails.
She's been a mommy. You can tell because she had lactated in the past. Really good shape. She's really meaty. She's a really nice specimen. Really pretty lady.
The final step, returning her safely to her family, means finding the troop on the move. Field Assistant Ed DeMoto can hear the sounds made by a troop of distant mandrils.
They're very close.
She's eating?
Despite being on protected land, mandrils in Lope National Park are still vulnerable to poachers. The situation is aggravated by heavy logging activity outside the park, because logging brings in roads, and roads bring in poachers. Just a few years ago, most of Gabon's forests were under threat. By 2002, more than half of them had been designated as logging concessions. If logging had gone ahead unchecked, the impact on wildlife could have been devastating.
You are in a forest that's never been penetrated by human beings. You just see this incredible complexity, you know, and so you see thousands and thousands of species all interacting. When you walk every day, all day, you can figure it out. You know, it's like a mathematical equation, and it all makes sense. So when you start logging, that equation just falls apart completely. And it doesn't mean the forest goes away. It doesn't mean that every species dies. It doesn't mean that elephants go extinct. It just means that incredible, intricate net that you witnessed falls apart.
When he created Gabon's national parks, President Bongo canceled logging contracts worth $30 million, thereby protecting more than 2 million acres of land. But the problem hasn't gone away, especially just outside the parks, where animals often stray. Logging means more contact between humans and wild animals. Half of Gabon's forests are still open to logging. And there is no creature with more to lose than the wide-ranging forest elephant. Since they only reproduce every 4 to 5 years, each attempt to breed is critical. The first rumblings of male sexual instinct awaken when they're 10 to 12 years old. Young bulls start to be more aggressive, with other animals and with each other. Males are only ready to breed when they reach the age of about 30. This bull has reached his prime and is going through a raging testosterone surge called must. It is time to mate. First, he has to dispose of the competition. The younger males are simply not equipped to take him on. But one bull stands his ground. the dominants face off, no blood need be spilled. The battle is over when the defeated bull turns away. Now, the winner can claim his prize. They will mate over the next 3 to 4 days. If they're successful, she will give birth in about 22 months. While the urge to find a mate will often drive bulls to travel great distances, for most of the year, elephants' movements are almost entirely dictated by the need to find food. They must constantly balance the search for nutrition against the energy they expend to get it. On the western edge of Gabon is an extraordinary place where a variety of foods are available, all within a relatively small area. It is called Loango, and it is a national park unlike any other in the country. Protected within its nearly 600 square miles is an incredible mosaic of habitats, from grassland and rainforest to coast, lagoon, and swamp. This swamp, known as a kaka, is submerged in over 6 feet of water for most of the year. But during the summer, when the waters retreat, it is transformed into a fertile garden, attracting elephants from many miles away. Despite being a national park, this unique wilderness isn't safe. Oil exploration could threaten Loango's natural riches. Mike Fay has returned to a park he helped create, only to find that there may be serious problems brewing. This is the border of Loango National Park. Once, this was all untouched rainforest. A Chinese oil company is exploding dynamite to search for underground petroleum deposits. Fay wants to talk with company officials.
Serious deal, man.
The blasts may be scaring animals out of the park and into areas where they are more vulnerable to poaching. Company management says the operation will be finished soon, and they just need to detonate the charges that are already in the ground. Companies from many nations have been doing this for years. But he wants to try to limit where prospectors explode their seismic charges. It takes a very long time to create a rainforest. Once it's gone, it may not come back for 1,000 years. The truth is, Gabon's wild places are as vulnerable as they are rare. And nowhere is this more true than in Loango, whether it's the rainforest or the coast, where an unlikely community of species still thrives. Animals move freely across the narrow strip of land where forest and sea converge. A wealth of food from many different species makes for a surprisingly vibrant seaside community. But the beach only really comes alive when the elephants walk out of the forest. They've come to find food. Like these palm trees, whose fruit and pith they avidly seek out. As well as the beach grasses and mangrove pods that wash up on the shore. Loango is full of such lovely incongruities as forest elephants beachcombing and hippos surfing the waves. Though we usually think of them as river dwellers, recent studies suggest hippos may not be complete strangers to the sea. Scientists believe they share ancestry with an ocean-going mammal that migrates here in great numbers. Every summer, as many as 3,000 humpback whales gather to breed. Today, their distant cousins may be using these same seas to travel up and down the coast in search of food. It was on this very beach that Mike Fay and his team ended the mega transect, their 15-month trek through the Central African jungle.
All of a sudden you pop out into this beach that was like literally landing in paradise.
Fay's guides had never seen the sea before.
It's just like total religious experience.
More than 5 years after Mike Fay's historic journey, he hasn't forgotten that moment, or this magical place, and why it's so important to protect it.
Luongo, as far as we know, is the only place left on the entire planet where the elephants and the buffalo and the pigs and all those things kind of spill out from the forest onto the beach. If we've got a future on this planet, then we need to pay attention.
In October 2006, Gabon ordered the Chinese oil company to halt its seismic prospecting in Luongo National Park. A victory for conservation, for now. The only long-term alternative to oil and logging may be a healthy ecotourism industry. But this won't happen overnight. The work is never truly over.
Yeah, is it worth it? Hell yeah, everything here in Luongo is a microcosm of why it's worth it. No doubt.
Gabon stands for the triumph of the improbable. A magnificent land where elephants still create their forest kingdoms. And hippos still dance in the surf. And where hope still endures that an extraordinary world can survive the ravages of history.